We have yet another transformative week and colorful week full of planetary transits. In this week's astrology, Leo season begins, giving us the urge to express ourselves unabashedly. A pre-shadow Mercury will shift into Virgo in preparation for its retrograde cycle. The Sun's making 2 alignments this week to Neptune and Pluto, which could rev up their retrograde cycles. We have 3 Quincunx alignments happening this week, which can point out where we might lack awareness regarding communication, love, finances, maturity, and our own personal power. Also, side note, Chiron's going retrograde on the 26th, and that would be a Friday. That portion will be in next week's podcast. So when I record that, we'll be about 3 days into that regressive cycle. It is a long regressive cycle. It is not going to go anywhere anytime soon. In December is when it goes direct, but I will be adding that to the week of July 29th to August 4th. That way I can give it more attention and really the attention it deserves. So when I release that episode, we'll be about 3 days into Chiron's retrograde station. Also, I will be moving the Mercury retrograde that's happening on August 8th on the July 29th episode, more or less just because it also does deserve its own segment and a longer segment. With 2 signs being involved, Leo and Virgo, it's important to give it the detail that it needs, and I mean, blame it on my Gemini rising. Along with Venus and Gemini, I've got to be detailed oriented, and sometimes that could be for better and sometimes that could be for worse. We never know. But that's how I'm setting those up for next week. But because we have a very mixed bag week, the vibes on the graph are varied. Good luck energy will be with us throughout the week, which will allow us to feel motivated, but also to take advantage of opportunities. On top of that, these enthusiastic tones is going to intersect family and friends, social, along with psychic vibes. So through this week, we might feel like we're starting to finally get the bandwidth again to be around people. So our need for social interaction is going to be strong. Despite there being some weird stuff popping up with solitude around the 24th, we may shake some of that off. Also, there's an intuitive vibe there. There's some Neptunian stuff going on, and some of it isn't very harmonious. However, we may feel a little more instinctive than usual. We may have more vivid dreams than typical, and have the urge to connect with our spiritual side as well. But for the most part, even if we have these mixed bag energies this week, there's still some fortunate opportunities and moments where we're going to feel jollier than we have maybe over the last couple of weeks or so. But yeah, we're in for another jam-packed week. Let's look at these next bunch of days and see what we can expect. Don't forget to like and subscribe because it helps this channel grow. Also, if you're looking for a natal chart reading or intuitive coaching, the links will be in the description box below. And if you'd like to support the work of this channel, you could do so by buying me a fresh cup of coffee. The link will be in the description box below as well. Monday opens up with a fresh sign change with the sun going into Leo. Happy Leo season and happy birthday to all the Leos out there. So now that it's Leo season, the sun is back to its governing celestial body. And what this means is we're going to get this celestial body in its full capacity. Obviously, with it being in its home sign, it shines brightly and it's able to do the things that it needs to do in order to execute its qualities without restraint. And that's not to say that there's not a lower expression to it, because it will express those qualities effortlessly as well. But now that we're here, as we leave the cozy, emotional, plus protective vibes of Cancer, we change to a tone that's playful, creative, and has a bold style. So the way this could manifest is, when we're in Leo seasons, it allows for us to take the time to admire ourselves and realize that we deserve to be appreciated by others. In other words, we may start recognizing that it's our time to shine. And this is due to the confidence that starts wafting through the air. The sun has a lot to do with our ego. It has a lot to do with our self-assurance. It has a lot to do with our self-esteem. And so this can be a time where we're feeling a little more puffed up than typical, or finding ways to puff ourselves up healthily. And of course, there's also an unconstructive version of this as well. Either way, we tend to get a nice dopamine hit for having some eyes on us. But if that's not your jam, it may be a time where we're feeling confident through hanging out with people, doing exhilarating things. Sometimes that can give us a sense of gratification as well under this energy. So our egos might feel puffed up from taking the time to be active participants in our lives and do something adventurous for a change. Another theme of this that can be revved up is expressing ourselves. So it may be a time to express yourself in various different forms. Sometimes that's through shining through your personality. And other times in Leo energy, energy, it has a lot to do with creative self-expression. In other words, it's a time to get original. It's a time to show our flair, our panache, our pizzazz that helps us feel confident about ourselves, but also leaves a good impression on others. Sometimes this creativity can stand out in terms of our style, or it could be about expressing ourselves through our hair. Leo has a lot to do with the mane. It has a lot to do with our coif. So this could be a time to really zhuzh up that hair in a unique style that's truly your own. Sometimes this creativity can express itself in art as well. Maybe this is a time where you're starting to feel inspired and it's time to get back into your art, or you have this innate talent or anything artsy and you're starting to feel more encouraged than typical to take action on those things. And if it's not art or anything like that, this could express in our homes by the way we're decorating. Maybe this is a time to zhuzh up your place, or it can express in your cooking. It can express in the way you entertain other people if you're having people over and having social gatherings. Energy like this helps us feel bold and feel effortless when it comes down to just being ourselves and just doing anything that we want to with self-assurance, because we're feeling extra puffed up in this energy. So it's a time to just do things on a grander scale and to just really be playful. Speaking of playful, this could be a time of being more romantic than typical. Because of the massive dose of confidence that we get from this energy, we can start finding ourselves directing it to our dating life, to our love lives overall. So whatever your romantic situation might be, whether you're single or in a relationship, this could be a time to get bolder in that area and feel more confident to just express yourself in that way, in a flirty way, in an ultra passionate way. So the urge to gain confidence through affection and just being open with our hearts and being warm is going to be revved up even more in this energy. Of course, there is a lower expression to this energy as there is any time a planet changes signs, and even though the sun rules Leo, it doesn't change the fact that there are some shadow expressions to this energy. With such an egoic energy, we need to be aware of being self-aggrandizing. We may feel more puffed up than typical, which, that's healthy. We should feel puffed up at times. However, it can take a turn that leads to conceit. It can take a turn that leads to being pompous. And so we can slip into a lot of arrogant behavior under this energy, which of course can become grandiosity and being braggadocious or being too dramatic, which of course can lead to misunderstandings and a lot of uncomfortable situations and just arguments for no reason because of that. Also, we need to be mindful of a superiority complex in this energy because that tends to get wafted up, and feeling this sinking feeling when we're not getting what we want in terms of attention. Sometimes in this energy, if we're not getting the validation we want, we tend to feel deflated, and so the wind gets taken out of our sails. So that's another thing that can be problematic. And of course, pridefulness tends to be an issue, which to some degree it's healthy to have a bit of pride, a balanced amount of pride, and have dignity in yourself. At the same time, energy like this, it can get very stuck in that sort of way and just become disrespectful. And this goes back to having a superiority complex and treating others as if they're beneath you. So that's something that can get wafted up in this energy. Other than that, let's use this energy to adopt a winner's attitude. With the sun being in Leo and just entering Leo, it's going to make two interesting alignments to Neptune and Pluto that have to do with their retrograde cycles. The sun's making a trine with Neptune. Neptune started its retrograde at the beginning of July, and so now we're having this trine formation, which occurs on either side of the retrograde. It's a marking on the beginning portion of the retrograde that things are starting to get underway. Therefore, Neptune is coming out of its station and starting to move. And towards the end of the retrograde, it marks a period as Neptune is slowing down and about to station out of its retrograde motion. But with this being the opening alignment for the retrograde, we can feel as though spiritual transformation is underway. This happens to be one of the more jollier energies during the Neptune retrograde, so we can feel this extra dose of harmony. We can feel these metaphysical vibes. This is one of the other reasons why we were getting some of those psychic vibes through the week and why we might find ourselves gravitating to spiritual things. So it could be a time to be more interested in energy healing, meditation, taking a soothing bath with incense and candles, playing around with tarot, talking about spiritual and philosophical things things with people that you really enjoy, and other forms of esoteric fun. And on that same day, we've got an opposite with the sun that's unlike this Neptune energy. Luckily, it brings in some mitigation. There are some mitigation factors going on this week. I mean, once we get to the end of the week, there isn't as many, but with this, we have the sun making an opposition with Pluto, and this can feel like a harder one to deal with. The opposition with Pluto, the good thing about it is it means that we're 50% done with the retrograde. These oppositions mark a midpoint, a halfway point. They're almost like a full moon, so it's peaked out energy that we're going to be feeling from this. But in such a pairing like this, it can be uncomfortable. It can feel like unconstructive energy, where we're dealing with dominant personalities or our own issues when it comes down to power struggles with other people. Energy like this can have us looking at destructive patterns that we might have participated in or we need to get out of. So it's kind of a time where we're looking at what no longer serves us and how we can't keep going like this. It can help us comprehend situations involving our ego, personal power, other destructive behaviors like doing things to gain leverage over others, insulting others, jealousy, and other forms of petty behavior or hostility. So this is the one that's very uncomfortable. We've got some energies that are just spiking that are a little weird this week. However, interestingly, Mars is making a harmonious alignment with Pluto and will be making a harmonious alignment with the sun. So this can serve as mitigating factors to that Sun-Pluto situation. It's one of those alignments that helps us address our assertiveness and our personal power, but in the most constructive way possible. So we're able to take action, speak directly, but do it in a non-offensive sort of way. We could do it in a more courteous way with energy like this. Because these are slower moving planets, we'll be feeling this for a bunch of days. We were already feeling this energy starting to mount a couple of days ago, and now we're going to really start feeling it throughout this week. And so energy like this is why we were seeing those ambitious vibes on the graph. It's why we'll feel motivated to take charge and do the things that we need to. So the lovely thing about this vibe is we'll feel focused. We'll feel as though it's time to take action on goals that we've had for a while that maybe were sitting in the back burner, and that could be any form of goal that we have for our lives. The cool thing about this energy is it's great for breaking harmful patterns. Considering we've got that Sun-Pluto opposition and it's about breaking harmful patterns, this may give us the leg up we need to take action on that. So this could be a time for major transformation or starting the process of major transformation as a result. And this also aids in detoxing things too. And so if you're looking to heal or clear things up, depending on what it might be for you bodily or anything else, a combination like this is excellent for purging things out, but in the most constructive way and not the destructive Mars-Pluto stuff we typically see. Continuing with Mars stuff, the sun's also going to make a transit to Mars. That's happening around the 26th. However, we can feel these energies starting to mount over these next 5 days, and energy like this brings in a ton of enthusiasm. So we might feel like we're in a chipper mood, despite some of the other transits that are occurring that may feel uncomfortable. Again, this is a mixed bag week with some mitigating factors, and luckily we have something like this that's going to really be helpful for motivating us and helping us feel like we're in the mood to socialize. This is also why we were seeing more social vibes throughout this week, but energy like this can translate into just getting out of ruts and feeling good about ourselves, feeling more self-assured to do things. So even if there feels like there's obstacles going on, we might let those things roll off our back and keep going because we're feeling like we've got the bandwidth to handle it, and we're just kind of at the point where we just really need to see some results in our lives. Some of these results might have to do with our romantic lives, especially with Mars being involved. Also with that Mars-Pluto stuff that's going on too, that can really rev things up in terms of passion and just sex and flirting and things like that. So that might be more revved up than typical with these alignments that are going on to Mars. Some of your other goals this week might be to socialize and to get out more and just to be with friends and to do something fun and adventurous. Or this energy can translate into fitness related stuff too. But either way, whatever we're passionate about, vibes like this are ultra encouraging. Once we get to the 23rd, we've got more Neptunian stuff. This time it's more uncomfortable and complex complex than the other energies we were feeling on Monday. Venus is going to make a sesquiquadrate to Neptune, and so this can create moments where we're trying to make sense of uncertainty in our love lives or anything to do with our finances. Because Neptune is in retrograde, this could be a sobering moment or a reality check for us when it comes down to these things. So it may cause us to confront issues that maybe we were in the dark about or we were in denial about concerning relationships. And so this could be about unscrupulous behavior in relationships, the unhealthy parts of relationships where maybe we might be displaying some sort of toxic behavior or we're putting up with toxic behavior. And so this tends to put a spotlight on things that felt hidden when it comes down to relationship matters. Also, this could be when it comes down to money. Maybe we're starting to realize that we're undervalued at a specific career or place of employment, and this is a time to start really looking and putting our resume out there because we deserve more. Or it could be about identifying bad spending habits, and so we're having to look at some of the situations where maybe we are being too careless when it comes down to our funds, and we need to make the necessary corrections in that. Overall, in this energy, we're needing to make the necessary corrections in our romantic scenarios, our close relationships too, and also within our finances as well. Once we get to the 25th, Mercury is leaving Leo and entering Virgo. So this Mercury in Virgo is going to be very different since Mercury is in pre-shadow and is going retrograde on August 4th. Of course, as stated earlier, I'm going to add this to the July 29th video to ensure I'm giving the detail that it deserves. So we have an interesting situation here. Mercury went retrograde in Virgo last year, and we're having a smaller portion of that. So now that it's in pre-shadow, we need to be aware of the Virgoan themes that are going to pop up during this retrograde period. So some of the stuff that I'm going to discuss is going to pop up during the retrograde, which of course, again, I will give some extra time to, so that way I can delineate all of the things that could possibly happen while Mercury is retrograde in Leo and also in Virgo for that small portion. But as we leave the bold, excitement-seeking energy of Leo, we shift into a modest, contained sense of communication and thinking style when it comes down to Mercury and Virgo. Another thing to note is this energy will be back in its regular format on September 9th when it re-enters Virgo, and it doesn't have all its retrograde-y themes. But the themes that generally come up when Mercury is in Virgo helps us narrow our focus on things that are more essential rather than all the noise that might be around us. With the higher expressions of this energy, it's a time to get organized. It's a time to clean things up that are a little bit chaotic in our lives. So if there have been any distractions preventing you from being your best self, this is going to be the time to really zero in on that, because you're more focused than normal and able to concentrate on what needs to be taken care of. Anything in your life that's just not passing the white glove test will be staring you in the face. So now is the time for our minds to start honing in on what needs polishing. And this doesn't have to be our stuff or our house that's disorganized or our desk, although it can be. Sometimes it's about getting our mind organized and getting our minds right, so that way we can focus on what's really important and what we need to craft in our lives. Maybe we're in a place where we want to craft one of our skills and become more expert in that because we're really wanting to get good at something and we just haven't had the time nor the focus to do so. Energy like this can have us thinking about becoming more healthy on all levels and fixing our regimen. So that could be another thing that we start zeroing in on, because maybe we're wanting to be more put together in mind, body, and spirit. Maybe we're wanting to be more put together when it comes down to our schedules. Or maybe we're just wanting to utilize our time wisely, and this is where that routine comes in. And of course, that can translate into our routines with health and anything that helps us become the best version of ourselves. This kind of energy can help us learn to take a step back and observe things before we act too as well. So maybe there's something that needs to be tweaked within our routine, and now this is our time to actually take a moment and look at it and analyze it for a bit before we make a decision about what needs to be done next and how to do it the right way. But once we do, this energy helps us solve problems really quick. Stimulation wise with this Mercury, we tend to get a boost through helping others and being of service. We get a boost from being useful it goes a long way in this energy, and it tends to give us that mental pick-me-up that we need. Also, this can translate into self-improvement as well. So we can get a significant mental boost by going on a personal growth journey. Another form of stimulation that comes up in this energy is finding topics that we can really take deep dives in. In other words, topics where we can analyze the hell out of it, gain new information, and use that information to be helpful, to be useful, but also to become expert in something. Communication-wise with this type of energy, it's not the most chatty energy. It actually could be very much heady. It's not as if we won't be socializing. There's a lot of social energy to support us going out and interacting with others. However, communication-wise, things may be very quick. We might internalize a lot. We can find ourselves being in our heads a lot with this type of energy, especially with this going into retrograde, which of course I'm saving for that week of July 29th. But this energy could really have us in our heads more and feeling like the interaction that's going to stimulate us the most might be one-on-one interaction rather than big groups. Even though Mercury is at home here in Virgo, Mercury rules Virgo, and this happens to be its exaltation point, it tends to have some problems and run into snags either way. So there is a lower expression when it comes down to this energy. And some of it can be being overly critical when it comes down to things. The great thing about Mercury in Virgo is it's great for discernment and really going through things with a fine-tooth comb and making sure they pass the white glove test. However, in this energy, sometimes that can get really sticky and it tends to translate into judgmental behavior and also nitpicking, which is something else we need to be aware of. Another issue that can come up with this critical energy is being our own worst critics. Again, this energy has us in our heads a lot more, so we need to be aware of how we speak to ourselves because that toxic inner dialogue can be revved up in this energy, leading to self-flagellating behavior that gets us nowhere. And speaking of which, this tends to rev up imposter syndrome. This tends to rev up that feeling that you're not good enough and that you're not able to do the things that other people do, and how could you be an expert in this area when someone else is probably better, which of course those things are not true. The problem with this energy when in its lower expression is a lot of self-doubt comes into play, and so that's something that we need to be aware of. Also with this, it can be kind of a cold energy, it can be kind of a cutting energy as well, so we need to be aware of saying things that are too blunt and maybe a bit mean, because that also drudges that up within this energy. Other than that, we'll eventually get this in its regular format on September 9th, thankfully. But we do have a retrograde in this energy, so some of these themes that I mentioned are going to pop up during the retrograde, but again, more of that next week once we get into the retrograde itself. So now this week, we are entering Yod territory. We're entering Quincunx territory. From the 25th, lasting into next week, we've got some stuff with the Quincunxes that are going to feel really irritating to deal with. Mercury's going to make a quincunx with Neptune and Pluto, and so this can show where we have a lot of blind spots, especially with it being yachted energy. We also have Venus in a quincunx to Saturn as well, and so this is going to affect things concerning our relationships and our blind spots to that. So with the Mercury-Neptune situation, a vibe like this can show where we're not realistic, where we might be speaking to ourselves too critically, where we may be having some issues with covert deceit, where we skim the details of a situation and can't be bothered with organization, can't be bothered when it comes down to our communication style with others, which can translate into being either rough in the way we speak to others, but also being our own worst critic, of course, but also speaking in a way that's cryptic, speaking in a way that's purposely deceitful. So that's something that we need to be aware of in this energy, and that's one starts on the 25th. Then we've got the Mercury-Pluto situation, which could show us a lack of awareness when it comes down to having a dominating way of speaking to others. In other words, throwing our weight around, coming on too strong. It could also show up as being overly secretive and withholding information from other people. This could also show up as having a petty way of communicating or just thinking. This can also show up as envy. This could also show up as jealousy within this energy, and just very power struggly ways to gain leverage with people. Then with the Venus-Saturn situation, which is on the 27th, this can show where we might be limiting ourselves when it comes down to romantic scenarios. So this may show where we may lack vulnerability, or we find ourselves in relationships that lack passion and love, and maybe, we don't see it because we're in it for the superficiality of it and for the show of it all. And so this may bring to our awareness where we need to work on that. So issues involving intimacy and how we deal with intimacy is going to really show up. It's going to get revved up in this energy. It can show where we shut down too much. It can also show where we may not engage in anything that's going to help us love life-wise because we're afraid of rejection. So rejection dysphoria could be really big in this energy, and so that's also something that's going to get pointed to our attention. That's also something that's going to get brought to our attention with energy like this. And this can show up when it comes down to our finances as well, and where we may be undervalued at a job and we're feeling like it's time to dust off our resume. Maybe we've been just kind of droning on, maybe we've just been in survival mode, and so whatever financial situation we have, we've been just dealing with it because we need to. And of course, obviously, we all need to do what we have to do. Nobody has the luxury to just quit a job and whatever and everything, and I never suggest that. Always make sure you have a backup plan before you leave anything. Exit strategies are everything. But with energy like this, it's giving us a nudge needed to reevaluate the importance of going after something fulfilling if we can. Going after a fulfilling career and a fulfilling love life overall. So energy like this yacht stuff that we have going on at the end, well, I want to say from the 25th and also the end of the week, and also going into about the 28th, 29th. There's definitely some yacht energy that's going to be picking up and some quincunx energies. So about midweek, we start seeing where we lack awareness in these areas, and that can be a real wake-up call to just make these changes because it's necessary in order for us to move forward and just have some progress in our life. It's an uncomfortable thing, but sometimes it's necessary to look at these things so that way we can fix the stuff that needs to be fixed. But yeah, definitely a potent week with a lot of stuff. Again, this is why I want to move that Mercury retrograde and Chiron retrograde to the beginning of July 29th, because they are their own separate entities and really do deserve a lot of attention. Anyway, I hope you all have the best week ever. Later, and see you in the next episode.